in a forgotten village nestled between the shoulders of two sleeping hills, where fog kissed the morning grass and time moved slower than the river that curved through the valley, there lived a boy named Rafik. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the strongest. In fact, most people in the village barely noticed him. While others shouted to be heard, Rafik listened. While they ran after dreams with noise and haste, Rafik walked with quiet purpose, his eyes filled with questions no one else bothered to ask. Rafik's family was poor. His father carved wooden tools, his mother worked in the fields. They didn't have enough money for books, but Rafik never complained. He would sit for hours under the banyan tree near the school he couldn't attend, listening to the muffled lessons through the open windows. With every word he overheard, he stitched together a universe in his mind: formulas, stories, solutions, inventions. No one knew what he was building inside him, not even he. The village children often teased him. They called him the ghost, because he moved so quietly, appearing and disappearing without a sound. But Rafik didn't let it bruise his spirit. He had made a silent promise to himself. One day, I'll be the reason they stop and listen. He scavenged scraps, broken radios, discarded watches, empty cans, cracked bulbs. At night, under the flickering oil lamp, he dismantled and studied them. Each tiny screw was a puzzle. Every broken part was a teacher. With no guidance but sheer curiosity, he taught himself how electricity worked, how gears moved, how to solve equations he had never been taught. His hands grew steady and his eyes sharper than ever. He was crafting a mind as intricate as the machines he rebuilt. Yet no one noticed, not his neighbors, not even his own parents, who were too weary from daily struggles to ask about the small parts he collected or the diagrams he drew on the walls of their mud house. But Rafik didn't seek applause. He understood something most people never do. Applause can't build your dreams, effort does. One evening, the village school's water pump broke. It was old and rusted, and the headmaster declared that they'd have to wait weeks for someone from the city to come fix it. Meanwhile, the children would have to walk miles to fetch water. Everyone accepted the inconvenience, shrugged, and moved on. Everyone but Rafik. That night, he walked to the school under a starless sky. He inspected the pump, studied the system, and quietly began working with his collected tools. He didn't sleep. He didn't speak. He just worked. Before the first rooster crowed, he had fixed it. The pump roared back to life with a thumping heart that echoed through the village. It was loud, but no one saw the boy who made it happen. The next morning, the villagers praised the miracle. "Must have been the weather," said one. "Maybe it just needed rest," said another. Rafik stood nearby, silent as ever, watching their joy, not seeking credit, only satisfied that he made something better. Quiet effort, loud results. But this moment, this small, invisible victory was only the beginning. The genius inside him was awakening, sharpening, rising. And now, the question is for you, the listener, the dreamer, the builder in silence. How many times have you paused because no one saw your effort? How often have you stopped because the world didn't clap? Let this be your sign not to give up. Because just like Rafik, your quiet grind can shake the earth one day. But only if you keep going, stay silent, stay focused, stay hungry. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs results. And your time is coming. Months passed, and while the village carried on with its daily rituals, harvesting, bargaining, gossiping, Rafik's world became deeper, more complex, and more ambitious. What began as small repairs turned into full-blown inventions. He crafted a makeshift windmill to generate enough electricity to light a single bulb in his home. Then he improved it to charge an old battery. He taught himself physics from torn textbook pages he collected from trash piles near the school. Every silent night became a classroom. Every failure was a quiet teacher. The world still didn't see him. But Rafik had stopped needing that. He was driven by something more powerful than validation purpose. Then came the drought. For the first time in decades, the river near the village dried to a lifeless stream. Crops withered, wells emptied, animals began to die. Panic swept through the village like a storm, and hope thinned out faster than the clouds. The villagers pleaded with the government for help, but the nearest city sent only promises. Rafik watched. He listened, and then he disappeared into his small hut for days. Inside, he was building something bigger than anything he'd ever tried. An underground water, harvesting and purification system using gravity and makeshift filters made from charcoal, sand, and broken piping. He'd read about it in an old science article he found in a torn newspaper. The science was real. The parts were scattered across junkyards. The belief had to come from within. While others prayed for rain, he planned for survival. Villagers noticed the strange digging near his home. Some laughed. The ghosts building tunnels now. Others mocked. But one or two curious children watched him work in silence, their eyes wide. They didn't understand what he was doing, but they could feel it was something different. Rafik didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just worked. One night, after days without sleep, his project came alive. The tanks filled, the filters cleaned, and when he opened the valve, clean water flowed. The boy who once fixed a water pump had just created an underground lifeline. It didn't flood the village with riches, but it gave life when everything else was dying. The next morning, he called no one. He simply opened his gate and let the thirsty come. At first, they were skeptical, but when the water touched their lips, cold and clean, their eyes filled with tears. Mothers ran to fill pots. Elders blessed the space with trembling hands. Children laughed again. Then the truth came out. The miracle had a maker. The same villagers who once ignored him now stood outside his home with baskets of fruit, clothes, and even offers of money. But Rafik didn't want their gifts. He wanted them to believe in effort. Not magic, not luck, but real, unshakable work. He spoke few words, but they carried the weight of the mountain. The answer is always in the doing. The headmaster of the school, hearing of the boy's brilliance, wrote to a city college. Engineers came, news reporters followed, and for the first time, Rafik's work traveled beyond the valley. He was invited to the city to study, to build, to share. The villagers stood at the edge of the dirt road as he left. The same road he once walked silently now echoed with claps and cheers. But Rafik didn't wave. He simply smiled, eyes locked ahead. Not because he was proud, but because he wasn't done. This was never about recognition. It was always about what was possible. Your turn now. Stop waiting for permission. Stop begging for applause. The world respects results, not noise. And your quiet efforts today may just save someone's tomorrow. Build, believe, begin, because greatness whispers before it roars. The city was nothing like the village. It was loud, relentless, and overflowing with distractions. Skyscrapers reached for the sky like they were in a race. Horns blared. Crowds moved with urgency. In this chaos, Rafik remained what he had always been: silent, observant, focused. At the Engineering Institute he was offered admission to, Rafik was surrounded by brilliance. But even here, he stood out not for his grades, though he excelled, but for how he learned. While others argued over theories, Rafik would build prototypes overnight. When they were still planning, he was already testing. His mind was like a river, quiet on the surface, fierce in its flow beneath. Professors began to notice. He was no longer the invisible village boy. He was the boy with the answers. One day, during a special innovation seminar, a national contest was announced. Solve a real-world crisis with engineering. Hundreds of students from elite institutions across the country would compete. Most chose high-tech challenges, AI, drones, robotics. Rafik chose something different. He proposed a compact, affordable water purification system for remote villages suffering from drought. They laughed. His idea was too basic, too rural, not marketable. But Rafik wasn't there to impress. He was there to change something real. With just recycled materials, some circuitry, and a vision rooted in his pain, he built a portable, solar-powered water purification box that could serve an entire village. It was light, cheap, and scalable, but most of all it worked. On the day of the finals, students gave dramatic presentations, backed with slideshows and statistics. Rafik walked onto the stage alone, no slides, no buzzwords, just the box. He placed it on a table, took a filthy glass of river water, and poured it in. Moments later, clean, drinkable water trickled out. The judges were silent, the crowd leaned forward. He finally spoke. The world doesn't need more ideas, it needs more solutions. That sentence changed his life. He won the competition, but more than that, he won the ears of those who once ignored the quiet boy. Investors approached him, nonprofits reached out, news anchors told his story, government departments requested his model. Rafik used all of it, not for himself, but for impact. He returned to his village first, mass produced the device with the funding he received, and distributed it to dozens of nearby communities. He didn't build a mansion, he didn't buy a car, he built a lab in his village, hired local youth, trained them, empowered them. He turned his silence into a movement. He didn't want fame. He wanted freedom for the poor, for the unseen, for the unheard. And in doing so, he became something rare. A genius who didn't shout to be seen, but whose work thundered across the world. He proved that legacy isn't written in noise, but in the lives you lift. Now you, yes you, sitting quietly with a dream, wondering if your effort matters, listen carefully. You don't need a spotlight. You need a fire. You don't need applause. You need consistency. And you don't need to be loud to be legendary. Start building in silence. Let them underestimate you. Let them ignore you. But don't let them stop you. Because quiet effort, when fueled by purpose, creates results that echo forever. So rise, not for attention, but for impact. Because the world doesn't remember the noise. It remembers the genius who changed everything silently.